Right, good morning everybody, welcome to the Wednesday Bike Club. And it's a beautiful sunny day for a change. Everybody's been looking forward to this. I've had so many bikes out this morning. It's a Saturday before Mothering Sunday. And obviously you're going to get this a little bit later. It's going to be on the Wednesday. But I hope you all had a lovely Mothering Sunday and you looked after your mothers. It doesn't sound quite right, does it, the way I say it? I'm not sure why. But to all you mothers out there, I hope you had a wonderful day. It still doesn't sound right. Anyway, what are we talking about? As I avoid all these ginormous potholes. So I'm going to do a little follow-up to last Wednesday's discussion, my Meteor conundrum, and just sort of chat about what people sort of thought about with the all sorts going on here. Lots of cars. What's going on here? What I should do about the Meteor. So I'll just cover that off, and then we're going to talk about the main body of the chat today, which is about how different motorcycle manufacturers seem in the UK try to build relationships with their customers and what they do. And it's just that I had some interesting press stuff from Royal Enfield the other day, and what they're doing. And it's sort of sort of similar in ways to like BMW, but we'll chat about that. So, you know, who does it well and who does it badly, sort of, and why they do it the way they do, because I think it's a very interesting part of business, really. But we shall see. Right, onwards. I'm going to find a nice spot to go and have a chat with you. All the daft's out and everything's lovely, isn't it, today? Absolutely lovely. Right, I shall see you in a sec. Let's see where we end up. Yes, we're back at the Roundtree. I thought I'd take a chance. On this beautiful day, I thought, there's going to be people here walking dogs and all that. And I was the only person here. There was no cars, parks or anything. This is fantastic. So, on this beautiful sunny Saturday before Mothering Sunday, although it's now going to be Wednesday, on there. What are we talking about? Well, I thought first of all I'd just cover off the episode about the Meteor. It's interesting. The Wednesday Bike Club stuff generates a huge amount of comment. Well, for my videos anyway, and the views are not massively high, but the comments are really interesting because I always treat it as a bit of an open forum. So what was the result of my asking you what should I do about the Meteor? Well, the overwhelming consent, or the consensus, if you like, was that people thought I should keep it. And that, I was sort of talking myself into keeping it. And that it's one of those things that every time I ride that bike, I sort of think, geez, what a great bike. But I do have this sort of thing where I feel I need to sort of renew and, sort of keep the channel sort of fresh with new stuff and ideas that are coming in. And I look at the stock of bikes that I've got and think, well, that could go, really. So, and because I've got access to two other J Series bikes, I've got my Classic 350, which I'm swapping with the Meteor, and then we still got the Hunter, which is Karen's ride. I've still got that covered. So I suppose that is that is my sort of thinking behind it. But the thing is, every time you get on a bike that you really like, you think, oh, I should keep this, but you can't keep it all. But that was the main consensus, was to keep it. And I think it shows again how loved those Meteors are. They're sort of like a bike that's so ubiquitous, and you know, it's such a popular bike for Enfield, and it's a popular bike on the channel. So I do love that bike, and I wouldn't get rid of it because it's a bad bike, but just it's probably the one that I could move on, I suppose. But we shall see. Some people definitely said about the Bantam. You know, the Bantam is a good choice, and it'd be I think people want to see how the Bantam performs in everyday sort of use. So that may be. And one thing I did notice about the Bantam, for the first time yesterday, I did notice that somebody now has. It's up north somewhere though, but I think, or north-ish. Anything past the Thames is north, isn't it? They had the yellow and silver in, which I tell you, looked fantastic. So if I was going to buy one, and I could, that might tip me over the edge of getting one. If they're becoming available now, that's probably what I'd have. Even though my Scrambler project is going to be yellow and silver. Oh, I don't know. Maybe they could be sister bikes. I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, interesting. Somebody said about getting a scooter, and I'd love a little Vespa or something out in France. Wouldn't that be cool? But the problem with having bikes in France is just the blooming insurance. It's just too expensive. I may look at again at having a bike in France. You know, a French registered bike, if I can get the insurance cheaper. So I will look into that again. But at the moment, I'm just going to enjoy swapping the bikes over. I would love to have this in France, but I think trying to get it down there just might be hard work. But maybe next year, because I'm really enjoying this bike, and this is actually a really popular bike in France, Moto Guzzi, and it'd be lovely to have this out there because the roads are so good, and it would really come into its own on the lovely smooth velvety roads. Anyway, there you go. Right, on to the next topic. So this thing about motorbike manufacturers, how they approach the market, because I've talked about this before about your advertising of motorcycles seems to be almost purely YouTube led, doesn't it, these days? And I actually, how many people actually read motorcycle news? Do people buy that? I must admit, I don't, and maybe I should start. But, I tend to wait for the Mr. and Fly to do his roundup of all the papers. And I'll have a look at that. But I think it's interesting the way that the market is. But when you actually really dive into some of this stuff, and the reason I brought this subject up was because Royal Enfield, because you can get onto what sort of like the press or the media list for a lot of these motorcycle companies, and Enfield is one of those. And they'll send me press releases and stuff like that. I noticed it was the beginning of the year, I think, that they were doing finance offers, sort of, with 0% interest and stuff on certain bikes. They were looking to promote things like the shotgun and stuff like that. And then, so I thought that it was quite interesting. They were very preferential deals for people, and I thought, well, that's interesting. Are they just trying to move old stock, or promoting just in a normal way? Let's put that back, just flapping around. And I then had another press release media thing where they were doing bike test days, and they looked really interesting. I first thought, is this just for, people, content creators and people like that? But it was for anybody. And you could go up, and they were doing 3 of these bike days where they had lots of different bikes, and you could go up and you could put your name down and go and ride several of these bikes in a session. And what was interesting, I thought, about that was that they were doing it at places like the Bike Shed and Crazy Horse and stuff, and that Bike Shed in London, which is, I thought, really interesting, because you know that Enfield and a lot of manufacturers, depending on sort of bikes that they're selling, want to give an atmosphere for their bike, or the sort of feel and the demographic of people they want on their bikes, isn't it, a little bit? They want it stylish and and stuff. You remember all the, I took the mickey a little bit, didn't I? The press release I did for the classic 650, they had, it looked like a Jason Orange and I can't remember the other girl's name, standing next to the bike, so you look completely disinterested. But it was interesting the way that they were aiming those bikes and that sort of, that fashion, or if you like, that sort of cultural look for those bikes. I thought that was really, really interesting. And so they were doing those, and they're free to people. You can sign up. I don't know where you would see that outside of the media pack, so I don't know how that would get to people. And that's probably why I should be looking at motorcycle news. But I dare say that people like Enfield have Facebook pages and all the rest of it, and so it's obviously getting out there, because it wasn't aimed at me specifically. And you think, well, that's an interesting thing to do, isn't it? It's a bit like if you go and get to test bikes like that, and it gives you a feeling of sort of well-being and generosity towards that manufacturer, because you think, well, they're putting some time and effort into people, and they're trying to build relationships, aren't they, with customers. That it's like, we have this in, is it Australia, isn't it? That you're a Ford man or a GM man, isn't it? And we're a bit like that in the UK, aren't we? You're either brought up on Fords, which I was, and you become a Ford person, and you always gravitate towards that manufacturer or Vauxhall, whatever it is. And I think that's what they're trying to do. Because when you look at other manufacturers like BMW, they do the same thing. And I'm going to come back to Enfield in a minute. When you look at BMW, and this is another thing I brought up, wasn't about, how can the GS be the best-selling bike when it's one of the most expensive bikes? But they've taken time to build relationships with their customers and new customers, and they've been very clever in their marketing and where they've seen the way forward, or we need to be in on this. We need to be at showing our products in this way, because I've talked to you before about the success of the GS is not just down because it's a great bike, but because of what they jumped on the chance to do the long way around series and all that sort of stuff. I mean, just an absolute marketing genius, wasn't it? KTM, you got to look at the KTM, where they were originally going to go with the KTM bikes. KTM thought, no, this is going to be a bad deal. And BMW thought, we'll have some of that. It's like the Professionals, isn't it? Do you remember the Professionals, where they used to use British Leyland cars originally in that series? And British Leyland was so terrible, they'd take a car away one night, and the next day it'd be a different car, and it was like, oh, we can't work with this continuity. So Ford jumped in and said, we'll have some of that. Look how successful that was for Ford. The RS2000, the Capris, wow, awesome. And that's it. You've got to have people that really understand marketing, but understand that it's a long haul, isn't it? It's not a short-term a view of short-termism. That is a view, isn't it? It doesn't work. It's a bit like .com, isn't it? It's like that .com sort of theory, isn't it? You make all your money in 10 minutes and then you don't care what happens after that. But companies like BMW, with their motorbikes, what they do, they built a relationship with police forces, with ambulance services, with people that needed big, reliable bikes. They do the off-road stuff, the adventure centres, don't they? They've got those big adventure centres in Wales, isn't it? And you could go along there and learn to ride off-road, big bikes off-road, smaller bikes and all the rest that they've got. And that builds a relationship with the customer. And you can now see that when I look at what Enfield are doing, they're doing a similar thing. Because also in a press release, Enfield are doing rider training centres. They've allocated 3 sites throughout the country where they're going to be doing rider training, where you'll be able to go and use the Enfield Gorillas. That's the bikes they're going to be running to start with. And you can go and do rider training with them and then go on to do an A2 licence. And that's... Enfield are great at marketing. They're absolutely great at marketing, and they're one of the most successful bike companies in the last few years, aren't they? Without a doubt. They've done an incredible job, and the people that are behind that, who understand that, are just really bright, incredibly bright. And you sort of think, well, it makes you feel like they're putting something back into the community a little bit. You know, they're not doing this for nothing. It is a marketing ploy, but ploy is a bit of an unkind word. I think it's a strategy that it builds a family. It builds a family of customers who, you know, they think, oh, you're going to start riding a motorbike this year. You want to go into those Enfield people because their bikes are great and they're doing these training sessions up there and all the rest of it. And then when you combine that with, you know, going to do these test days on their bikes at really fantastic places, it builds a sense of community, but it also gives you a sense of what their culture is, and you think, I want to be part of that. That's what I want to be part of. And you know, I want that style, I want that look, and that's what they're going for. And I think that's incredibly clever for companies like Enfield. And you don't see a lot of other companies doing that, because when you look at some of the other manufacturers who push their bikes, now when you look at the Chinese manufacturers, companies like Vosge and all the others, QJ Motors and all the rest of it, they seem to be going down the route of just flooding the market with bikes and giving you lots of products, so you're sort of like bombarded with it. And I don't know if that works. I think you can, as words before, over-egg the pudding in that sense, that there's so much product that you can't see the wood for the trees. If something interesting, you look at it through other manufacturers, because anybody that plays guitars will know this. You've got companies like Fender. Fender, you know, probably the biggest guitar manufacturer in the world, or one of them, or biggest brands in the world. And they muddied the waters with their brand so much by bringing out more and more guitars with Squires and all the rest of it, that you couldn't work out what was the best one. You know, was that good? Well, why do I want to pay all that money for an American Fender when I'm going to buy a Chinese one or a Japanese one or a Korean one, whatever? And I think this thing, you could put too much into the market where it becomes very cloudy, and you don't know what's what anymore. And you think, well, is that adventure series of bikes the top model, or is that the cheap model? What is it? And I think what companies like BMW do, where they don't offer masses of product in the motorbike lineup, they concentrate on what they got, and then they work on building the relationship with the customers and get this very loyal customer base. And I think that's what Enfield are doing. And I think that's the right way around it, isn't it? You know, companies like Enfield, they're obviously an incredibly profitable company, and you know, the manufacturing plants and the rest of it, and they have a very good reputation. But they're not resting on that. They're building more. They're building more stability into their actual product, aren't they? Or into their actual company, I suppose, and in their customer base. You want that cast iron stability, which you can rely on. You know, when times are hard, when everybody stops looking at all these other manufacturers that are coming in, they come back to the main reliable manufacturers they know they can trust. And I think that's the way these companies should be going. So then I suppose that brings us to the question, why do you gravitate to certain manufacturers? You know, what is it that, you know, because we do have this loyalty, don't you? You can, if you say something bad about a manufacturer, a motorbike, you know, so, you know, you'll get a whole world of abuse, wouldn't you, from people. So no, they're the best bikes in the world and all the rest of it, even if they've never owned one. You know, that's the thing, isn't it? This is this brand loyalty that might go back through the generations of your family. Just because my dad had one or my granddad had one, you know, these are fantastic things, and they may or may not be. Who knows? But why do you gravitate, and what draws you into that manufacturer? Is it just purely the bike, or the way that they behave with their customers and all the rest of it? You know, because we know we have all these problems with, you know, after sales and stuff, and that's why people have been very sceptical about Chinese manufacturers, isn't it? Because the after sales, you know, it was difficult to back it up. And I think that's really important, isn't it, to people in this day and age. So that's what I'd like to hear from you. What do you think that, you know, a good manufacturer is what they do with outside of their motorbikes just selling you the bike, that they do other stuff after that. Do they engage with you at all? Or do they leave you a little bit cold and you think, oh, I wouldn't touch those, I wouldn't touch those bikes. I find it an interesting subject. I always find these subjects interesting. And I just think companies like BMW and now Enfield are getting it right. But I think Enfield in particular are really sort of knocking it out of the park with their strategy and what they do. They're not bringing out hundreds and hundreds of new models. They're sticking to certain platforms and stuff, which is fine. You always want to think, oh, I wish they'd make this, or I wish they'd make that. But it's very easy to muddy the waters in the end, and you bring out too much product and people don't know what it is you're selling them anymore. You've lost the thread of what they're doing. They've gone into a funny area, and people just don't get it, and it pushes customers away in the end, because somebody else will pick that up and think, oh, they're doing that wrong, this is how you do it. We'll pick those customers up. So there you are. That's my thought, my Wednesday Bike Club thought on this beautiful day, and out on this beautiful bike. So I'm going to go and try and find a coffee, because it's such a lovely day today. It's going to be busy tomorrow, Mothering Sunday, isn't it? Karen's off in. I've got the weekend to myself. Karen's off in Marrakesh with her son, and she's having a great time. I spoke to her last night, and she's all over the place. She's up the Atlas Mountains today on a trek. Must be bad, love. It must be really bad. But it was much easier on a motorbike, wasn't it? Right, there you go. I will see you next Saturday, where we've got the Enfield Classic 500 ride and look at, and sort of mini review. I don't do in-depth reviews, but mini review, and what an awesome bike that is. Right, look after yourselves, and I will see you next time. Take care.